All right. Can I move on then, Minister, to another topic of interest? And it is the allegations that have been made by the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner, General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. And I'm not asking you to comment on police matters, but it's to do with the budget allocation. The 2025-2026 financial year, the police have been allocated just over 120 billion rand. And I suspect a big chunk of that is going to go towards crime intelligence. South Africans tonight are probably asking themselves, is this money going to value that is going to be realized through fighting crime, or is this money going to waste? How would you respond to that?
Here's an interesting take I made yesterday from what General Mkhwanazi was saying. I have been having discussions and difficult discussions with the security cluster over duplication of functions. All right. One of those was that when we tried to create an investigating arm in the NPA, we're duplicating already existing arm in the form of the Hawks, in the form of crime intelligence. I was informed that the IDEC, which is that its main focus will be on large commercial crimes, including the state capture. And therefore, that's the first point in the mandate. The second point is the type of skill sets you're going to require for that kind of function. Yeah. So that was a convincing argument for us to have all of this duplication of functions from a funding perspective. But when you listen to General Mkhwanazi yesterday, if what he says is correct, there's also a breach both in terms of mandate and in terms of skill set. So that's what he said in the public. I'm not saying that's accurate.
Okay, so that out.
That's what affects me. Otherwise, oversight functions are done by everybody else. There are parliaments, there's parliamentary committees that do the oversight over these functions. But for me, is that duplication of functions which impact on the fiscus.
Take us through the specific duplications that you say he mentioned yesterday.
He says the idea which is part of the NPA has crossed over into the normal criminal investigation functions. If that is the case, then it's not in line with what it's a duplication in my view from a funding perspective. That's not what we agreed. Yeah.
And how do you cure that in terms of budget allocations?
It's difficult. I can't say it from here and say that's what I'm going to cure. I can say it's problematic if that statement is true. And therefore, we'll have to discuss with the security cluster how we're dealing with that question.
Yeah. Minister, you probably have read in various media reports about the plunder that goes on in crime intelligence. Much of what is going on right now affects that specific division within the South African Police Service. Are you happy throwing money into that division, even as we know that they are probably a unit that whose budget we never really get to know as to how much goes in there, given the secrecy of the environment?
The first thing you must pose, is there a need for throwing money into that section? The answer is yes. If you ask that question, is there a need to put money into that section? The answer is yes. The second set of questions, is the money being used efficiently? That's a different set of questions we need then to pose, to start work, to check if that's inaccurate. But putting into money, the nature of crime in South Africa, you need to put money into crime intelligence. It's in the nature of the kind of challenge we're facing. Yeah. The question, then the second question, is it being used efficiently? Is something we need to probe.
If not used efficiently?
No, then there's going to be consequence management.
In what form?
Mind you, the police, they were quoting certain rules yesterday, which I don't know. That's a function that the department is going to do.
All right. I want to move into the municipal space now. And the understanding is that you have written a letter to the Minister of Cocta, particularly against municipalities that are failing to pay their debts, whether it be water boards or other third parties. Again, I use the phrase, what is the cure for these municipalities that not only waste monies, don't keep with their debts or don't keep up with their debts, but also they seem to use money through unfunded budgets?
Let me say, I've not written, I've copied my colleague.
Right.
Okay. I've written to the mayor of each of those municipalities and say, if you don't answer the question how you are going to pay these water boards by a specific period, I'll be obliged to take your equitable share. Right. I've informed him accordingly, and I've said, you as the mayor, tell me how you are going to be paying those water boards and electricity and so on, failing which we'll be forced to take the equitable share. Answer you, what is it and what's the cure? Even the cure is there. The unfunded mandate, we are discussing it with Minister Hlabisa. How are we going to handle the unfunded? You know how an unfunded mandate works? They go and set up in a council chamber and vote for a budget in which, when they make that vote, they know fairly well that the things they say they're going to spend the money on, they don't have the money for it. So Minister Hlabisa and I are developing a strategy to say how we're going to deal with that question.
Can I tease out that strategy? Because based on what is being reported today, and I'd like for you to confirm it, did you suggest at any point that municipalities that fail to live up to their debt obligations, their bank accounts must be attached?
No. Let me just tell you, anybody can attach a municipality. ESCOM has attached it on several occasions. Has attached it through a court order, has attached it I'm proposing a slight kind of change where we develop within government a system where we'll be able, anybody who owes somebody else in government, we owe each other, we should be able to take the money from your transfers. Yeah.
All right. Can I talk about the Lotto deal? Kaya Stole, who comments, who writes a lot around business issues, he says that the Lotto deal that's just been signed could derail South Africa's exit from the grey list. Do you agree with that sentiment?
I'm not entirely sure how these two are linked. Okay, I'm not entirely sure how these two are linked, because there were certain performance areas which were identified by FATF, 22 of those areas, for us to perform in order to move out of the grey list. The last two has been attended by the plenary of the of FATF, and they would then come in South Africa and do an in-local inspection. But to my knowledge, even those are almost complete. So I don't know how a plenary would be called to say, no, these guys have messed up on a Lotto. Let's call another plenary. I don't know how does that work.
He makes the argument about governance flaws. And these are the very things that landed us there on February 23.
It may well be, let me just say, sitting where it may well be that these are flaws that may in future resuscitate another grey listing. I don't know. But I don't think that they can say, we are off the hook. Oh, but wait, we find some small thing after we've got you off the hook, and therefore we are back. I don't think FATF operates in that way.
Do you have a problem with the current Lotto license operator? Yes, they haven't started work yet, but given the name of the deputy president that is all over this deal,
let me just say,
is that problematic?
Let me just say, you know, people tend to throw things when they want to dirty a deal. When they want to dirty a deal, a competitor throws up some dirty on the winners. And we're typical with the media, we run with that. What I would, if you ask me, I don't know, I've not been following that, but I would have preferred an environment where there's a proper investigation which suggests indeed there's something dirty. In the absence of that, just throwing mud at each other, I can't form an opinion on the basis of that.
Last topic of discussion, the debate around the nationalisation of the South African Reserve Bank. Where are we on that, and what is National Treasury stance?
Let me just say, first and foremost, there was an ANC resolution on this matter, which I happened to have co-authored the resolution because I was the chair of the ETC at the time. And it's quite important to contextualize it, because you will see in that resolution, we say it has been a historical anomaly. That was what we say in South Africa, because after the Second World War, most central banks became fully state-owned. Few of them stayed out, the Americans, South Africa, I can't remember others, stayed out of this being full owned. And we then say it is a historical anomaly. It's something we need to change through a nationalization process. But as we do it, we must make sure that we're not enriching speculators. It's an important thing, because if you look at how people are moving at it and how other speculators are working to benefit out of this, it's massive. It's massive. even some foreign investors, like a German guy who runs around the country asking people for to pushing them to nationalize, because he knows he's already set his kind of things on it in a ducks in a row by putting the international institutions to take us to them in order for massive compensation. So we've got to weigh, are we losing anything at the moment? At the moment, no. We're in charge of the Reserve Bank. We appoint the governors, we appoint the deputy governors, we're in charge of the policy. To the extent that external shareholders, they are involved in the administration of the bank.
Tinkering with its inflation targeting mandate, where do you stand?
No, I'll say something tomorrow about that.
Why not today?
Eh?
Why not today?
I'm not delivering my speech today.
Okay, I'm going to wrap on another bank, Itala Bank.
Yeah.
You intervened, and the people in KZN, ANC people in KZN, were celebrating, saying that that was through their intervention. That bank, as we understand it today, is still not taking deposits. So how is it going to survive?
First question. In law, Itala is not a bank. Because for a bank to take deposits, it must have a license. It does not have a license. What I did when it was about to be liquidated, the Prudential Authority justifiably said, for as long as there are depositors that are not protected, are liquidated. So what we did was to guarantee all depositors. And that guarantee has gone to a bank that has taken those depositors. Itala exists, so it can be liquidated. Anybody who wants to start it can start it and apply a new license and meet all the requirements of the bank, that's fine, of the Reserve Bank, that's fine.
Godongwana, thank you very much for your time and best of luck.